What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you from Long Beach, California. It is Sunday, August 4th, 2024. And like I used to say previously on the podcast, I switched up the intro a little bit, but feels fitting today. We're back like we never left. So glad to have you guys along for another awesome edition of the Ducks Dish podcast, coming to you live on the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also find today's episode over on my Twitter/X account at mtorresports and on my Facebook page at mtorresports as well. Man, it's been a minute since I did one of these podcasts. I just put out a little tweet, but I'm sure you guys noticed that I wasn't around for a little bit. But I was just on vacation, got to go out to Glacier National Park in the beautiful state of Montana with my girlfriend and a couple of our close friends. And then we also went out to Banff National Park in Canada. So that is why you haven't seen or heard much from me or read much from me in the past 2 weeks or so. But we are back, and there is so much to talk about ahead of the 2024 college football season as well. We got some recruiting to get into today. The Ducks are also in fall camp ahead of their season opener against Idaho later this month. I believe that's August 31st. And then you have the high school football season starting out here in sunny Southern California. And I cannot wait to cover all of it, but don't want to waste too much time. Know that you guys came here for some Oregon football and recruiting talk. So we are going to get into that today as 5-star Cleveland, Ohio, Shaker Heights safety Trey McNutt has committed to Oregon. He is one of 2 big commitments that the Ducks scored over the weekend, specifically on Saturday, as Will Stein found his first quarterback commit in the 2026 class in Jonah Williams out of the state of Illinois. I think I'm probably going to have an episode on that later on. I want to focus on Trey McNutt and the 2025 class in this one. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that episode, make sure you're following and subscribed on your favorite podcasting platform, or you can subscribe right here on the Scoop Duck YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our awesome content. And while you're at it, come and see us at scoopduck.com for the best in Oregon football and recruiting. You got myself, Justin Hopkins, we got Lyndon Heil, Colin King, QB11 does some awesome evals when Dan Lynn and the Ducks land new players. So really think it's the best place to take your Oregon fandom when it comes to Oregon football and recruiting. So let me know what you guys think about this Trey McNutt commitment as the Ducks land another 5-star in the 2025 recruiting class. So let's hop right into it and get into a little bit of the Trey McNutt recruitment and kind of what things are looking like now that he is in the fold for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Might be a little bit rusty since I haven't done one of these in a little bit, so just ask that you guys bear with me. But hope everyone's having an awesome Sunday, and you are just as excited as I am for the 2024 football season. So let's get into this. Trey McNutt, kind of an interesting story, right? It looked like for a long time, Oregon was the team to beat in this recruitment. And he was actually scheduled to come off of the board before I went on vacation. And then he had decided to delay things a little bit, rescheduled his commitment for yesterday, August 3rd. And we all know what ended up happening. The Ducks ended up winning out in the long run. But that one, there was a lot of chatter when he chose to reschedule his commitment date, right? Because it looked like, kind of like I was saying, the predictions were coming in. Oregon looked like the clear-cut team to beat. And then now you have a player that's pushing back his commitment date. You'll remember, just to kind of refresh your memory, this was on the same day that there was a mass IT outage for lack of a better word, I guess, throughout the country, I think across the globe. And long story short, a lot of flights got canceled, and kind of the popular word was that I think Steve Wiltfong and then Justin also reported it, that he wanted some people there for his big moment that were coming in from out of town, and they ultimately weren't able to make it. So that was, it seemed like the reason that he had pushed it back. But there was another team that was pretty heavily involved in this recruitment. And there was a top 5 that Trey McNutt chose from. He was also considering Texas A&M. He was considering the Florida Gators, the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's from the state of Ohio, and he's an Ohio State legacy. So that's another little layer in this recruitment. And then you also have the USC Trojans, who were one of McNutt's finalists before he ultimately landed on the Ducks. And I think I probably speak for a lot of people that follow Oregon football, a lot of Duck fans. When you have Oregon going against a team like Texas A&M in that final hour, you can't help but sweat a little bit. I mean, they've kind of been, even though I think they're lacking a bit for what they're doing on the field, they are a recruiting power. They can go anywhere in the country and get just about anybody they want. And Oregon fans know that too well. Looking at a couple names more recently, like Noah McHale out of Laverne, California, Bonita High School, really talented linebacker. I thought Oregon was the team to beat. And I had my prediction in for Oregon to land Noah McHale, but it ultimately didn't happen. And Mike Elko and his staff did a tremendous job getting that one done. You got to give credit where it's due, as well as Southern California cornerback Adonis Curry, another guy that Oregon really wanted, but the Aggies came in and were able to pull that one off. So that's kind of one of the more recent storylines that we've seen here in this 2025 class. Looking at Oregon's competitors, is Texas A&M emerging in the state of California, which has really been Oregon's bread and butter, specifically Southern California. Looking at another guy, Hassan Longstreet, talented quarterback, Elite 11 finalist out of Corona Centennial. He's committed to Texas A&M as well, and Oregon has been recruiting him during his process before he ultimately landed on the Aggies. So now that Trey McNutt's in the fold, I think some Duck fans can kind of breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief in a summer that has been, I think a mixed bag might even be too dramatic. It's been a really good summer for the Ducks, but we've also seen a couple of decommitments. Even since I was last on here with you guys for a podcast, the Ducks lost a couple of commits. You had defensive lineman Josiah Sharma flip from Oregon to Texas, a commitment that lasted a little bit over a month, if that. I don't even think it lasted an entire month, but that was obviously a surprising development when he chose to flip his commitment from the Ducks to the Longhorns. And the Ducks also lost a commitment from gosh, I am completely blanking. Shows you that I'm getting back into it. Did they lose us? I want to say they lost another one. Deshaun Brame, thank you. Deshaun Brame out of Derby, Kansas, the 2025 tight end, flipped his commitment from Oregon to Tennessee. So the Ducks have had a really good summer, but also after losing out on DJ Pickett, the number one cornerback in the country out of Florida, who committed to Brian Kelly and the Tigers, the Duck fans wanted some momentum, right? I think they were hoping for some good news, right? And Trey McNutt, especially when it comes to 5 stars, fans of any team, I think they get so fixated on 5 stars. But for Oregon this cycle with Trey McNutt to go into the Midwest and get one of the very best defensive backs, I think he's on 3's number 2 safety. That's a big accomplishment. That's a big achievement. So looking at Trey McNutt, 5'11.5", 183 pounds, according to the On3 player database, the number 47 player in the country, the number 2 safety, and the number 2 player in the state of Ohio. That's according to On3. But looking at the On3 industry rankings, he is a 5-star, number 20 nationally, number 2 safety, and the number 2 prospect in the state of Ohio. this is big to get a player of Trey McNutt's caliber, also from the Midwest, from the state of Ohio, as you're moving into the Big Ten. That just feels like the perfect storm if I'm Dan Lanning and I'm looking to create some great storylines and some momentum, which I think is really a big part of recruiting strategy when things are happening, where they're happening, what's the platform of it all. That's strategy to it. I don't think anybody on the Oregon staff, much less Dan Lanning, is going to say that on the record as far as the recruiting strategy and the timing and how things happen. But I've been doing this for a little bit, and I think that that's definitely part of the strategy to be fresh off of Big Ten Media Day in Indianapolis. Oregon Football Media Day just happened. The excitement continues to build. Fall camp is underway. Hey, let's go ahead and get ourselves a 5-star safety from the state of Ohio and an Ohio State legacy nonetheless. They were listed as a finalist, but McNutt wasn't really making regular visits out to Columbus like he had been to Oregon, which I think says a lot about where a recruit's interest ultimately lies. Who is he going to visit frequently? Who is he being linked to legitimately or illegitimately? I think that has to do with all of this. And recruiting is as fluid as it's ever been. I think in previous years when I was on this job, it seemed like, okay, this guy was definitely trending towards this school or that school. And it kind of seemed like that for a while with Trey McNutt. But like I was telling you, when he chose to push things back, then that kind of created some space, right? For, hey, is Texas A&M a bigger player in this than people are maybe talking about? And now we're in an era of recruiting where the leader or a recruitment can change by the hour. Heck, I'll be totally honest with you guys. I didn't know that Josiah Sharma was going to be committing to Oregon the first time around, right? Until a little over an hour before it happened. So this is something that happens just drop of the hat, or sometimes I think that's a good way to look at this recruitment. When you look at what Dan Lanning and the Ducks were able to do with Trey McNutt, they got him out for multiple visits. They got his last official visit, which I think is also important when you're looking at the timing of everything. And then they got him back out for a visit after he chose to delay his commitment. And he came out for the Saturday Night Live camp, which is one of the biggest recruiting events of the calendar year for Oregon every year. But now it looks like this is going to be the last one because of some new NCAA guidelines that have been put in place. There's more specifics out there, but basically I think they're just not allowed to host those events during the summer, and there's new calendar terms and whatnot. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but the Ducks were able to really just stay consistent in this recruitment. I think that they emerged as the best option for him. And I think that they checked a lot of his boxes when you're looking for that NFL development, when you're looking for national championships, or being in a position, I should say, rather, that is going to help you pursue that national championship, because we know that Oregon hasn't won one yet. But I also think that's part of the appeal. As weird as it might sound, I think a lot of fans are obviously bashing Oregon for not having any national championships in the trophy case. Recruits don't look at this the same way that fans do. And I don't think people talk about that enough. Sure, Oregon would love to have the same number of national championships as an Alabama, as an Ohio State, as a Georgia. They don't. So they got to find ways to make yourself appealing and make yourself notable. And part of the way that they've done that is by going out there on the field and winning some big games and building this brand. Obviously, with the help of Nike, we can't go any time without talking about them when we're talking about what Oregon has become and how they've gotten to this point. Wearing a Nike hat right now for those of you guys that are watching along on this episode. So it feels like it was a perfect storm for Oregon as they're looking to build their recruiting footprint in the Midwest. And Ohio is a state that produces a lot of top players every year, but Oregon hasn't really been a serious contender, I feel like. And to get McNutt over some of those other schools is no easy task. And you absolutely needed to get a big safety this class with this group of prospects that Dan Lanning and Chris Hampton and company were going after. More on that in just a second. But I got to give a huge shout out to my guy, Ruben, and Ranchito Grill. Not sure what your plans are for dinner tonight, you guys, but you got to head on over to Ranchito Grill in Springfield, 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try out their homemade tortillas. They got margaritas and a patio as well. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy, Ruben, and let him know that Max Torres sent you. We are rocking and rolling here on a Sunday afternoon. Glad to have you guys along for an episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Let me know how you're feeling about Trey McNutt's commitment in the live chat, and maybe ask me some questions if you're feeling up for it. I'll try to get around to those on the back end of the show. We got a comment here from Andrew, who's a longtime listener and viewer. Thanks for tuning in, Andrew. Says, the flock rises. 3 amazing additions to the secondary between Finney, Brew, and McNutt. Getting Jonah Williams would round things out beautifully. He also says, they've been flooding the Big Ten network with Oregon content. It has been glorious. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about this 2025 Oregon recruiting class and where they're at. You highlighted a couple guys there in your comment, Andrew. Brandon Finney, a talented corner athlete from the state of Maryland. Dorian Brew, originally from Ohio, as well as Trey McNutt, but now he's playing his senior season at Conroe, Texas. Conroe High School in the Lone Star State. And Trey McNutt. And then now the big name that you got to follow, of course, is Jonah Williams, the number 1 safety in the country, a 5-star player out of Galveston, Texas, Ball High School. So McNutt's commitment brings Oregon to the number 5 class in the country for 2025, number 2 in the Big Ten, trailing only Ohio State. And the Ducks now have 3 5-star commitments in the 2025 recruiting cycle, headlined, of course, by wide receiver DeCorian Moore out of Duncanville, Texas, the number 1 wide receiver in the country. And then you have Trey McNutt, as well as 5-star wide receiver Dallas Wilson out of Tampa Bay Tech in the Sunshine State out there in Florida. So I said that the Ducks needed some really big-time safety help in this 2025 class. If you're Chris Hampton, you got Aaron Flowers, an Adidas All-American in the 2024 cycle out of Forney, Texas. You also kind of put a cherry on top of that, if you will, by adding Peyton Woodyard, another 2024 Adidas All-American selection out of Bellflower, California, St. John Bosco High School. He was committed and enrolled at the University of Alabama when Nick Saban was still coaching and practiced with the Tide during their run in the college football playoff. But Kalen DeBoer comes in after Saban's retirement, and Woodyard elects to enter the transfer portal and take his talents up north to Eugene. So pretty crazy haul that just continues to get better. I think that Oregon's kind of gotten reliant. This is getting into the reasoning here why I think they really needed to get a top-tier safety. Oregon had kind of looked like they were getting a bit more dependent, maybe more dependent than they would like, on the transfer portal to find some big-time safeties. You get Evan Williams, who follows in the footsteps of his older brother, Bennett Williams. He comes over for a year only from Fresno State. And then this cycle, you get Brandon Johnson out of Duke. He's going to be a star and do a lot of the star position and play a lot of different things for the Ducks in the secondary there. And then you also have Kobe Savage from Kansas State, but those guys only have 1 season left. So we've seen that the profile and the recipe for success is building through the high school rankings. And then you're kind of filling in some of those gaps or getting some of those luxury additions like a Derek Harmon or a Jabbar Muhammad through the transfer portal. So it was huge for Oregon to get one of their top 3 safety targets, at least one of them. Fahim Delaney was one of them. He was a really elite guy, also out of the state of Maryland, like Brandon Finney. He's now committed to Ohio State. And then you have Trey McNutt, of course. And then the third one was Jonah Williams, And it looks like the Ducks are battling LSU and Texas as he aims for a decision later on this month. So this secondary haul is looking really good. The Ducks haven't had a really star elite safety since Javon Holland, I would say. And all he's done in his time since being at Oregon is develop into one of the very best safeties in the NFL. So you got to make sure that you keep swinging for those top tier guys. And that's exactly what they were doing with Trey McNutt. And now he is in the fold. Johnny Johnson III says, I recall Andrew saying we weren't getting any more 5 stars. I don't quite remember that comment, but it sounds like you've been in a lot of shows, Johnny. So maybe he did, in fact, say that. But everyone wants to focus on the 5 stars. And I think it makes sense because Oregon is pushing the envelope and entering a new tier of recruiting. I said that after the 2024 class was signed. I said that it's been, the top 10 area has kind of been the norm for Oregon, but now I think it's going to be the top 5. The top 5 is going to be a more realistic and I think more consistent result that we see from Dan Lanning, Marshall Malco, Tosh Lapoy, Rashad Wadood, Junior Adams. Like I could name a bunch of recruiters on this staff, coaches and recruiters that do a phenomenal job, but we've never seen, Justin and I have been talking about it, we've never seen Oregon in the running for this many 5 stars. And they were able to steal the deal on one of them in Trey McNutt by getting a verbal commitment. And I think one of the things that really makes him special, Trey McNutt, is his versatility. You see what he can do in the secondary, roaming in the secondary, covering tons of ground, making plays in the air. But he also has some great highlights that I wish I could show you, but I don't have my monitor set up just yet in my new spot. He makes a lot of great plays as a wide receiver too. So if you add more guys that are elite athletes that can do a lot of things well, you're just elevating the floor and the ceiling, I think, of your football team. And for the Ducks to close on a major 5-star that they were in contention for, especially after missing on DJ Pickett, I think that was just the development that they needed. We got a comment here from Quack Fanatic says, tight end recruiting is still a big concern. Yeah, I think, I don't know if I would say it's a big concern, but certainly a big priority. I think Oregon knew that they were in a really big battle with Tennessee there, right, towards the end, before Deshaun Brame announced his commitment on the back end of June. But ultimately, Brame, kind of like Sharma, right, he ended up having a pretty short-lived commitment and flipped his commitment to the Volunteers. And he had been the guy that I think fans and probably the coaches were the most confident about here in the 2025 class at tight end. You had Deshaun Brame. He was a big target. Lincoln Cure, of course, who ended up committing to Kansas State. He was a big target and someone that I think Oregon probably finished number 2 for. Pretty confident in saying that. Texas A&M, Kansas, also after Lincoln Cure. And then you had Caleb Edwards out of Northern California. He's now committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. So kind of like linebacker, right? Linebacker and tight end. You're seeing Oregon in an interesting spot here with a lot of their top guys already off the board. And it's an interesting spot where your top targets are players that are committed, but 15 commits in the class, number 5 class nationally. I think you're still feeling good about where things are at, and you got to play the long game with a lot of these guys. I'm not saying, hey, everything's going to be okay and Oregon's going to flip everybody. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you can definitely expect Oregon to stay in the mix with a lot of their top targets, despite commitments to other schools. So tight end is a big position that I think Maringer and the Ducks need to hit on in the 25 cycle after signing Roger Saliapaga out of Utah and AJ Pugliano out of the state of Oregon. In the 2024 recruiting class, still looking for a commitment at tight end in the 2025 class, but definitely going to be a fun position to follow nonetheless. So now we've talked about it a little bit earlier on in today's show. With Trey McNutt in the fold. Side note, couple of epic little tidbits in his commitment. He was doing his commitment live on the On3 Recruits channel, and he originally had his hats on the table. It was a little bit of a shaky connection, so you couldn't see everything super clearly, but he had his finalists on the table, and he went to put on the Oregon hat. Then he put it down. Then he kind of pulled out a mystery box, which is becoming a little common with these recruiting announcements. He pulled out the mystery box and he had a chain. He wore the Oregon Ducks chain to signify his commitment to Dan Lanning and company. And that was just epic. I loved that touch from Trey McNutt in his commitment video, and then, or his commitment live stream, I should say. And then in his commitment video, he kind of had a cool little production that was put together, kind of covering his journey from playing in the Pop Warner days as a kid, and then playing high school ball at Shaker Heights, and then now getting ready to take that next step to Oregon. He finished the video by kind of just turning his phone, and it was Dan Lanning saying, "Hey, Trey, it's time. Like, let's go." And then he ended up committing to Oregon as a shout, kind of played the video out and played the video down to wind it out. So some pretty unique little details and style choices as Trey McNutt hops in the fold. William McBride's in the chat dropping some duck emojis. What's going on, William? Thanks for being here. But like I was telling you, Jonah Williams is now the big name that everybody is focused on, and he's going to be making his decision before too long. Jonah Williams will be announcing his college choice later on here this month in August. I'm trying to find the exact date. I'm pretty sure it's August 25th. But I am continuing to buy myself a little bit of time here and see when he is going to be announcing his commitment date. August 24th, excuse me. Jonah Williams, according to Hayes Fawcett of On3, will be announcing his college commitment on August 24th. He'll choose between Texas, Oregon, LSU, Texas A&M, and USC. And Oregon is trending currently for Jonah Williams on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. I have my pick in for Jonah Williams on the for Oregon to land the 5-star safety. Justin Hopkins also has his prediction on Oregon for Jonah Williams. Let's see who else. I'm just checking in here. Justin Wells over at Inside Texas, he has his pick on Oregon as well. But a newer pick here in the last couple of weeks that I'm just seeing right now, Billy Embody of the LSU Bengal Tiger, the On3 site, and then SMU Pony Express, he has logged his prediction in favor of LSU. And some of the recent intel, I guess, or the chatter that is out there, I need to do some digging now that I'm back. LSU seems like they are trying to turn up the heat a little bit in that recruitment. So if Oregon can add another 5-star defensive back, another 5-star safety in this class, boy, would it be fun to see Jonah Williams be that guy, a 2-sport star, someone who is a stud on the baseball diamond as well, and a name to watch in the 2025 MLB draft. He has gone on record, just in case you have forgotten or haven't heard, Jonah Williams has gone on record saying that if he is taken in the first 3 rounds of the MLB draft, that's kind of the sweet spot for him, I think, when it comes to choosing between a professional baseball career or playing things out in college. And he wants to play college baseball as well as college football at his school of choice. So things are developing well for Oregon in the recruiting. On the recruiting trail here in the 2025 class. Another kind of superlative, if you will. They have a really high average commit rating, and that is kind of what has made this class special in one regard, and making them stand out from other programs is they are really taking this quality over quantity approach that has been a talking point throughout this cycle. And I think that you got to look for having the best pound for pound class that you possibly can. And I think that Dan Lanning's doing a fantastic job of that with a guy like Trey McNutt, DeCorey, and more. They also have a quarterback in Achilles Smith Jr., Jordan Davison at running back, Deere Hill Jr. at running back. This is a really, really good class, but Oregon is looking to fill some holes, needs to fill some holes at linebacker and tight end. Linebacker, of course, you have Jeffrey Bossa and Justin Jacobs likely heading to the NFL after this season, so you've got to continue bringing in those star linebackers for sure. Let's see. We got a question here from Quack Fanatic. Thoughts on offensive tackle Dunn out of Utah? Yeah, Aaron Dunn is supposed to announce his college commitment before too long as well. He was one of those names that I saw kind of winding things down close to his decision. August 8th is when he is coming off the board. He will choose from BYU, Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Utah. Aaron Dunn out of Spanish Fork, Utah in the 2025 class. 6'7", 6'8", close to 300 pounds. A guy who took his official visit to Oregon, but not someone that you've heard a lot as far as Oregon really being in the forefront there for him and his recruitment. So I don't have a school that I am ready to put a prediction in on or anything just yet. Again, that's someone I got to learn a little bit more about, but it doesn't seem like Oregon is the team to beat for Aaron Dunn ahead of his August 8th commitment. We got KB13, my guy KB. What's going on, KB? He's in the chat. Shout out to you, KB, out there in the SIP. Justin Reeves with a comment. I feel like if Oregon has the season we think they can have, there might be some sneaky 5-star, high 4-star flips for Oregon closer to the early signing period. And that's a great point to bring in here, Justin, because there's still a long way. We still have a little bit over 4 months until this 2025 class, a majority of them, that is, put the pen to paper and ultimately sign with their school of choice. And we know that it's not everything, but what a team does on the field leaves a big impression. I don't think it plays the biggest role for everybody in recruitments, right? You have guys that are committing to schools that are rebuilding, but Oregon already has a lot of things going for them. They already have a pretty darn good amount of momentum here in the 2025 class. So I agree. If they can have a really solid season, if they can make the Big Ten title game, if they can win the Big Ten in their first year, if they can make the playoff, return to the playoff in their first year in the Big Ten, and maybe even win the national championship, right? Those are all huge expectations and goals that this team has. If they can do any of those things, you have to figure that's only going to make them more appealing to some of these top tier recruits and make it more likely that they have, like you said here, some sneaky 5-star, high 4-star flips, because you got to play the long game with some of these guys. So I completely agree. Love that comment. Brad's Adams, 5 stars in the chat. And we got a question here from Patrick. Status of Michael Terry. See him as a tight end, like current high school sophomore on the roster. He also mentions Kenyon Sadiq. Maybe that's the guy that he's referencing. Yeah, Michael Terry is another big name that we're kind of tracking here as Oregon kind of tries to fill out this offensive class. He is going to be, at least it looks like he's focusing on a couple of particular schools, right? You have him looking at Oregon, Texas, and Nebraska. He returned to Oregon for Saturday Night Live, and this is a guy that Oregon has really been in a good position with for a while. I think Nebraska got the first official visit, then Texas, then Oregon, I want to say. He also visited Texas A&M officially, but he's not currently looking at the Aggies anymore, it looks like, but he hasn't really set that top group of schools, hasn't set a commitment date from what I can see here. But he is a guy that is just a freak athlete, number 1 athlete in the country, according to On3. He had told me that Oregon was recruiting him as a running back. I don't know if that's still the case. I wouldn't think it's still the case since they already have 2 running backs in the fold. Maybe they see him as a wide receiver, and they could see him play some tight end because he is a bigger guy at like 6'2", 200 plus. And we've just kind of talked about it earlier this episode, right? Like the tight end picture is a little murky right now for Oregon. So maybe they do slot him in as a tight end, because I think that's a guy that you just need to get on your team and then you figure it out later. But Oregon has really stayed in the thick of it in that recruitment. They got strong San Antonio ties, which is where Michael Terry is from, Alamo Heights High School, thanks to Will Stein, Antonio Parks. Drew Maringer is also someone with heavy Texas ties. So Oregon's going to be in the thick of it and really be a competitor there for Michael Terry until the very end. We got streamers telling me about 543 people here in the live stream. So big thank you to you guys for tuning in and showing out in the way that you are. Make sure to like and comment and subscribe if you have not already. All the support goes back to Scoop Duck so we can continue bringing you guys the best coverage possible. I'm excited to get the 2024 season rolling. I'm hoping to be in Eugene for the Ohio State game and maybe another game. And then I have to look at the high school season and see where I'm going to be traveling out to give you guys the best Oregon recruiting coverage that you can find on the internet. So greatly appreciate the support. Just wanted to make sure to thank you guys. Quack Fanatic says Sadiq getting all the hype. Maybe this will be my last little comment question that I touch on for today. But I was listening to Kenyon Sadiq at the Oregon Football Media Day, and this is a guy that you just got to be so excited about, right? For the tight end in particular, I'm a little biased because I played tight end in high school, and maybe because there's so few elite tight ends in the NFL, it's hard not to get excited about tight ends, right? And Kenyon Sadiq has an awesome story. The Ducks were able to kind of get a diamond in the rough, if you will, out of the state of Idaho. He was the number one player in the state of Idaho, but a state that's not really recruited super heavily. You have some good players there every year, don't get me wrong. Look no further than 5-star wide receiver Gatlin Bear in the 2024 class, but the Ducks did a great job by winning out for Kenyon Sadiq, and he's one of the fastest players on this team. I think he got mentioned in the vein of Brock Bowers, not saying he's going to be the next Brock Bowers, but he was either a player or a coach was kind of mentioning him in that vein. And I think that that's super special. He's one of the fastest guys on the team. Like I said, crazy athlete, was hurdling guys in the spring. He said he's right around 241 pounds. So he's put on 20 pounds this offseason and he hasn't lost any speed. Like, that is insane. So I think that the expectations continue to build for Kenyon Sadiq, but that's just great. And it couldn't come at a better time for Oregon because you're losing Patrick Herbert. You're losing Terrence Ferguson after the 2024 season when their eligibility expires. So if Kenyon Sadiq can have a great season and really find his role, that was what his personal goal was, he said, told members of the media. If he can find his role on this team, I think that we could be looking at another special player waiting in the wings. And that's another special player to add to Noah Whittington, Jordan James, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Dylan Gabriel. There's already so many stars on this team. And I think that Kenyon Sadiq, Jurion Dickey, Jay Harris, those are stars in the making. We haven't seen quite what they've been able to do. I mean, Jay Harris had a pretty mean stiff arm in the spring game. I think everybody saw that. But Kenyon Sadiq, Jurion Dickey, who changed his number from 99 to 13. Cool little story behind that as well. We haven't seen kind of what's really possible for those two guys. And I think that's those are two guys you really want to watch this season. Thanks for the comment there. William McBride with another question here. Do you think Chris Henry is just farming for views on X, or is he genuinely considering Oregon? Interesting question here. Chris Henry Jr., the number one prospect in the 2026 class. According to On3, I'm pretty sure he's number one overall, but I'm going to double check that right now here on the fly. Let's see what we got here. Okay. On3 has him as the number 2 player overall in the country, behind, of course, Jakeem Stewart, the talented lineman out of Louisiana. But Chris Henry Jr., a star wide receiver, and not just any star, the 5-star wide receiver out of Santa Ana, California, Mater Dei High School, currently verbally committed to Ohio State, but he's made a pair of visits out to Oregon in 2024. And I believe he was most recently on campus for Saturday Night Live. And there's a lot of really good recruits that Oregon's going after. But for a guy out west who transferred over out of the state of Ohio, another Ohio link, he's legitimately interested. I think he's legitimately interested in Oregon. The 2026 class, there's still so much time with those guys. We're kind of more and more steadily putting those guys at the forefront of our radar. Junior season is the most important season for high school prospects. It's kind of a lesson that I've learned, because that's when a lot of these guys really pick up a lot of their offers. They make a name for themselves nationally. They're maturing physically. They're getting better. Chris Henry Jr. doesn't really need a whole lot more of that. He's already a well-known commodity, but I think he's legitimately interested in Oregon, especially when you look at what Oregon has done at Mater Dei in recent years, what Junior Adams has been able to do, developing the wide receiver position as a top name on the West Coast as well. I think Chris Henry Jr. is genuinely considering Oregon, but as we've seen in the past, Ohio State is no easy team to recruit against, and we'll have to see what Oregon can do there. Still tons of time there with Oregon and Chris Henry Jr. But I think that's going to do it for me on today's episode of the pod. Just a hair over 40 minutes. Really grateful for you guys tuning in. Make sure to follow me on all social media platforms. I'm at mtorresports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck YouTube channel and come see us at Scoop Duck on 3 for the very best in Oregon football and recruiting. And share the show. Share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to talk some Oregon football and recruiting with me. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.